It comes down to ego versus math. At the end of the day, is founders especially can get wrapped up in this is my identity, which is dangerous. To some degree, it's good. You want them to have ownership and to really have that on their back and take it. But if you're going to lose, like waiting till you've spent all your money and depleted your 401k and sold all your stocks and you're divorced, go ahead and lose earlier than that if you can see the writing on the wall. Or what I try to advise them is let's either figure out a pivot. Let's figure out if you have something that can be sold, or can you get acquired? Is there a merger? Is there a strategic partnership? That there are other ways to do it to make it a bit softer. But most startups fail. We know that. I don't know what the math, I think it's 70% or 80% of startups fail in the first 2 or 3 years.
Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on the show today.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Excited.
For those of you who don't know you, why don't you start with a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Jeff Kennedy. I'm the VP of Sales and Partnerships for a company called Leading Real Estate Companies of the World. We're a global network of independent brokerages based in Chicago. I think we have brokerages in 80 countries at this point, about 550 brokerages and 135,000 agents. So my role as VP of Sales is to be the liaison between our network and our members and all the technologies that are out there. So constantly vetting and meeting with people and deciding who we want to bring in as a preferred vendor, and then spending the year marketing them to our members to make sure that it's a win-win situation for both parties.
That's your day job. Tell me a little bit about your night job or extracurriculars as well.
Well, it's interesting. It is my full-time job, but it kind of dovetails into some other things that I'm doing for fun. I work with a company called Reach, which is basically an accelerator program wholly owned by Second Century Ventures, which is a subsidiary of National Association of Realtors. So they go through 80 to 100 applications a year. They select 8, and then they put those companies through a process or a program that has a graduation, and helping them go to market and with strategy and pricing and introductions and all of the things that come with advising. So I get to see a lot of really cool up-and-coming companies through that. And then often companies will come out of that and then become part of my preferred vendor program. So it's kind of like a feeder system. And then I also work with Modern Ventures, which is another quasi-competitor of Reach, but they're friendly. They're also based in Chicago. They do the exact same thing, but they do 2 classes per year versus 1. And both those things keep me busy, plus my full-time job. And I got a wife and 3 kids and a puppy and all of the other things that life brings.
So a little bit of a busy man. Let's jump into the enterprise side first, because you kind of, again, sit at that intersection between new technology and then also the actual go-to-market and sales of that technology. So this landscape has shifted a lot in terms of what startups need to do, and that means from a fundraising perspective, from a product market fit perspective, from a go-to-market perspective. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how that shift is showing up for the problem that you are selling, or at the very least how you're selling the problem that you're solving, and how you have to put additional importance on it. So what has that shift been like from, call it the 2020, the 2021 vintages of startups and products, where there's a lot more free money? It also then affects the product and how you position and sell the product, versus today, which is a dramatically shifted landscape.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The last 3 or 4 years, this year excluded, have been just crazy, right? There's money everywhere. People were selling at high multiples. And if we go back to the beginning, often these startups are really, really, really smart people that have a cool idea, that put this program together, and then off it goes, right? They're going to hit a point typically where they realize that just because you're really smart doesn't mean you know how to sell or tell a story or market or how to do legal or hire people or anything else. So they run to this spot where they need funding to help scale and hire good people. Great. 3, 4 years ago, that wasn't a problem. You could show, a pathway, your ARR is going up, you have a story, investors will throw some money into it, you take that money and go hire good people, build a team, off you go. Well, that money dried up a year ago. So a lot of these companies that have really smart people with interesting, cool products can't get that funding as easily. It's taking them longer. They're not getting the funding at all. Maybe their revenue has flatlined or even gone down a little bit, which no one wants to invest in that. So you've got a lot of good companies that aren't able to grow now. That's just what it is. That's just math. The ones that can grow are telling a story. And I think what worked 4 years ago or even 3 years ago, you could have a shiny thing that was cool and interesting and oh, that'd be interesting if agents will pay $20 a month for it. And that worked then. Today, my experience is, especially with the lawsuits happening and the economy and the rates are still high, and we have an election year and all these macro kind of things going on. If you have a product that's being pitched or positioned as a nice to have versus a need to have, you have an uphill battle because these brokerages and therefore the agents are worried about what the future holds. They're not looking to take on new expenditure. Now, if you come in and replace, like I've got product X and you can get rid of product A and B, use my product, get a better result and save money, well, that's a good pitch. But not just, I have a new thing we'll put on top of your existing stack. And it's going to be even $2 an agent per month is going to be too much. They're not taking on new money at all. They're looking to cut expenses until everything figures out. So I don't know that the startup community, because again, I'm doing demos every single day with these like wide-eyed founders that are so excited about what they've built, and they should be. They should be proud, but they're going to run into a buzzsaw of reality when they go out there and try to pitch. I had one company say, well, it's only $99 per month per agent. And I'm like, I've got people that won't pay $2 a month per agent. Like, there's just no, maybe the top 0.05% of agents could afford it and wouldn't care. Most people aren't going to do it, but he has to go out there and find that out on his own, I guess.
The buzzsaw of reality. I think that's a pretty apt metaphor of how reality sometimes feels when you show up and you have your brand new spanking idea and it's going to change the world, and then reality shows up.
Well, one of the things I like to tell people when they come in, and I say it tongue in cheek and I say it in a funny way, so it might land differently on this, but I'll say, how do you tell somebody that their baby's ugly? Like, and that's uncomfortable conversation. Like, you birthed this, you put your own money, you got money from your mom and dad, you can do all these things, and you built this thing. And I'm like, there's no defensibility. 3 companies already have it, and they're like $500 million companies. They could just like eat your lunch tomorrow, but they don't know that. But how do you say that without crushing their spirits? I don't want to do that. Is there a pivot that you can do to differentiate yourselves? Like, those are the conversations that are interesting for me, because everything's just a word problem. You have to figure out the solution.
Plus, there's the balance of the founder narrative that we all hear, and to some degree you want to bolster and lean into, is don't listen to the naysayers. Like go and do it regardless of the doubters. But then there's also, well, you need to listen to good advice. So you need to kind of balance those two. I want to actually ask, so you talked about how the pitch needs to shift a little bit, solving needs rather than nice to haves. Do you think that the market has shifted and now you just have to be a lot more focused on those need to haves? And so what you are selling and how you're selling and what problem you're solving has fundamentally changed? Or when we were in kind of the good times, so to speak, should you still have been solving the need to haves, but you got away with the nice to have problems? And the reason I ask is because, like, it's an interesting question, right? Like, should you always be solving need to have problems, even if you can get away in a land of make-believe money and things are flowing and everyone's kind of up and to the right? Or is it that, no, different times require different problems to be solved, and we've just shifted, and now some people are getting caught in that shift?
I'll give you a story. I wanted to create a sub program underneath my vendor program that was just around recruiting. So it was like Solutions Group is the name of my preferred vendor program. It was Solutions Group Recruit. So if you had companies that had specific recruiting software, let me know what it is, and I'll package that together in a little basket and send it to all my brokerages. I had companies that you would know, well-known companies, come and say, yes, we have a recruiting product. I'm like, what is it? They're like, it's our website. Our website is so beautiful that agents will flock to you and want to work with you. It's our company website, right? Or we have a CRM that you should. I'm like, that's not it. So I guess my point is, they've always been able to market things. You can market anything to anybody, anyway, and you can draw this super long dotted line and say that they're connected, and they really aren't. I think people did get away with maybe nice to haves versus need to haves. If you boil all of the nice to haves all the way down, they'll say, well, this is lead gen. Okay, well, lead gen is a need to have, but is it really lead gen? Is having your name on a magnet on, the refrigerator after you close a deal, is it really, I guess kind of how much are you spending for it? Is that where people are going now? I think that from my perspective, all that I'm focused on right now is, do you generate actual revenue? Are you a mortgage partner, a title partner, insurance partner, home warranty partner? Is there a rev share agreement where because a lot of these brokerages, their splits are getting compressed. They got lawsuits going on. The market's down. They're not sure what's happening with listings, and they're looking for other ways to generate revenue per transaction. Are you helping that? That's a pretty easy sell to get the door open, to have somebody listen. Other than that, if you're not making a process faster, more accurate, and cheaper, then I don't know that there's a place for you right now. The funding side of things is warming back up. There's more money coming in. It's not back to where it was. I don't know if it will ever be back there, at least for the foreseeable future. But it is coming back, so people are getting a little more likely to invest in like kind of home run shots versus just being really, really safe. But that's my core three: faster, more accurate, and cheaper. If you can do all three of them, I'm in. If you can do two of the three, I'm probably still in.
Yeah, it again comes back to business fundamentals of where can you make more money. You can get more customers, you can get more out of each customer, or you can reduce your costs, right? One of those three. And if you're able to do that, then it becomes a no-brainer decision. It comes down to, well, how much conviction and confidence do I have in this individual to start this product to actually achieve those results of more revenue, reduce costs, or more revenue per customer.
It opens up another thing is if you've got a product that's already in the marketplace, what's your differentiator from the other ones that are there? How far behind are you from the first one to market? Is there a space? Can you sell that? Can you catch fire and grow? The other thing is you'll come and say, no one else is doing this. This is we're the first one. And I'm like, there could be a reason no one else is doing it. Like maybe you figured out the secret sauce and you're brilliant and this is going to be $1 billion company. Or maybe a bunch of other companies looked at it and said, no, there's no money there and they're not doing it. Just because you're the only one doesn't necessarily give you 100%, proof that you're going to be successful.
Where does AI stack in all of this from new companies, new products, and new potential vendors?
I, like most of the United States, I'm so tired of hearing about AI. It's like the new blockchain. Everyone's got AI, like AI-based rubber bands, AI, everything is AI. Even when it's not, even when it's just machine learning or it's just automation, everything is AI. I feel like super cool a year ago. You could just put an IO behind your name and you were cool. People are getting smart. People are getting a little bit saturated or over it. So I feel like, again, everything I'm sharing today is Jeff Kennedy's opinion. This is not indicative of leading RE or anything else. I feel like AI is a feature. It kind of tells me like it's the engine that is part of the car, but it's not necessarily the destination. So like AI is important, I guess, to mention that it's there, but when you're selling me on your product, you can spend literally 8 seconds saying it's AI. I don't need to know how it works. I don't care how it works. What I want to know is what's the result that you're creating. And I think people are focusing on AI as the end result versus the feature.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Even with blockchain, again, the fundamental value of blockchain is being able to have a native currency on the internet and being able to kind of do those trustless transactions. But no one gives a shit about how it actually works, or they just want it to be fast and make it secure. And then I don't care if I'm paying with PayPal or a credit card or Solana, but make it fast, secure, and cheap, right? And so I think those are some of the things that cryptocurrency natively can do, is kind of do those transactions trustlessly and cheaply. But again, there's still a lot of wood to chop in terms of what is that overall experience.
Well, and we're at the very, I mean, you know this, we're at even the earlier stages on the blockchain space, right? Is that there are applications that make complete sense for blockchain in real estate and in other things. It hasn't fully developed to where we want it to be. It needs to get critical mass, all of that stuff. It is and will be something. But in the beginning, everyone wanted to say they were blockchain, and a lot of it was just chatter. And the same thing's happening with AI now. Is there is definitely, AI is not going anywhere. It's going to continue to exponentially get better and faster and cheaper and all the things we talked about. But it's not quite there for a lot of these products yet. And so they're trying to use AI to get in the door. And I think that's the talk about how it's cheaper, more accurate, and faster. Leave the AI kind of off to the side and you're going to get more eyeballs.
Given we're still very early in the AI cycle, LLMs, et cetera, but you have seen probably a lot of pitches either be authentically AI or slapped AI onto an existing product. What is is there kind of a through line of like, okay, I'm starting to see certain use cases make sense for AI capabilities for this type of feature or that type of feature, or is it still just you're feeling it out and yeah, tell me 8 seconds about that one feature that you have AI with, but I don't really care about it until you show me the compelling use case.
Well, I work in tech and business and kind of the intersection of those things. I'm not a techie person. I often get locked out of my own computer because I forget my password. Like I'm that guy that calls IT and like, did you restart your computer? Is it plugged in? Like I'm not a techie guy, so I don't really know how everything works. But I've seen some companies do the AI thing really well. As an example, there's a company called Corded. Do you know
No.
Corded.io? So Corded goes in, they access the MLS real time data. These are ex McKinsey guys that built this. And they've created an algorithm that says, okay, based on your behavior and your production, this agent is within the next 90 days, likely within a 90% accuracy to leave their brokerage. Pretty cool, right? It's a secret weapon. So from a retention standpoint, if I have a brokerage, I can say, okay, Jeff's getting ready to leave. I need to give them some love, keep them in, give them a deal, have lunch with them, whatever. Or maybe I don't care if they leave. Maybe I'm like, good, push them up. That's interesting. Where it gets really cool is I can then do, okay, I want to find agents that have 5 years in the business, do over, 25 million in volume, XYZ, whatever my buy box is, and I can go in my MLS footprint, and if all of my competitors can see which one of their agents are likely to leave in the next 90 days based on their behavior within a 90% accuracy. Now I
That's
know
wild.
who my targets are. Then it says, okay, based on their behavior, they're having a lull in production right now. They're probably hurting and a little bit worried and probably blaming their brokerage. This is a good time to call them. So it's who to find, who to talk to, when to contact them, and then it actually writes the text message or the email to them for you, which you get to proofread and change to make sure it's your own voice and sends it for you automatically. All of that's automated. Now, is that AI? Maybe there's a little component of AI, but most of it's just automating and machine learning. But that's the kind of ways that people are taking interesting things like this and applying it to real life. Now, if I was going to sell that to somebody, like I just did to you, I would spend almost zero time on the AI component. Nobody cares. What I would say is you're going to be able to know, tell the future, and what can you do with that? If you could tell them in the Super Bowl this year, would you put a bet on them? Yeah. Well, if this agent's a top producer and they're likely to leave, then 90%, maybe spend a little bit of energy trying to build a relationship and invite them in to see your shop.
Yeah, it's a super interesting kind of use case. And I think you did a good job of capturing, again, no one actually cares about the fundamental technology. They care about how does this apply to my business and how do I drive more revenue or reduce costs, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you're able to bring in high producers that are disenfranchised with where they are currently, that's meaningful impact to your overall top line revenue. It also brings in a question of, sometimes we overly fixate on startups and the technology that they're building and the next technology. But I think it's an interesting perspective too of for existing businesses, medium businesses, even enterprises, who wins in this kind of automation phase that we're at with AI or technology or whatever you want to call it. But what is the winning strategy for existing businesses in this kind of slowdown period where we do have higher interest rates and money is not flowing as freely and you want to focus a little bit more on bottom line and EBITDA, but who wins and what decision making process should they be going through for bringing in strategic technology or processes, or maybe it's even just more fundamentals on headcount, talent, and kind of planning for the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Good for me is that if anybody has technology long enough, they end up being upset and mad at it and want to change technology. So there's constantly people bouncing back and forth, which is good. That creates new renewals and new contracts and space. Everyone just picked their company and kept them for 30 years. There'd be no growth. There'd be a boring business. Let's put this in two different buckets. You have what I'm going to call legacy companies. I'm speaking specifically about prop tech. That's the space that I know the best. You have your lone wolves and your constellations and your big, maybe billion-dollar companies that are just big corporate behemoths. They have a lot of money. They're PE backed, but they move very slowly, like a cruise ship changing position. It just takes a while for them to get behind something and do the resources to it and build it. And you have other companies that are startups like within the first 3 years of originating, and they're way more nimble and they got a team of 25 people and maybe they got not a super complicated cap table and they can make decisions really fast. I think the nimble people are going to move more quickly, but maybe their product won't be as fully baked as the big guys. And if they're good enough, the big guys will end up acquiring them. Right? That's how it works. Who wins? I think they both can win. And in the end, the consumer will win because the consumer, the broker, doesn't care about any of that. They just want to know that they're getting the best product. And so may the best man or woman win. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to marketing and being relevant. And I've seen big companies swing and miss. I've seen big companies hit home runs. And I've seen tons of startups miss because they usually don't know what they're doing. And once they get past that beginning stage, and I've seen a lot of them win. So I wish there was an answer. It really, there's so many variables in there. You could have, we have an election year. We don't know what that's going to do. We have a war in Ukraine. We have rates could get cut, and all of a sudden we have listings now that no one's not quite sure how that's going to play out in July with the change on compensation. Like there's so many things at play that it's really hard to forecast that.
Would you start a startup right now in this macro environment?
Yeah, I love startup founders, and I think if you have a really cool product that makes sense, that you can explain in 2 sentences, that you can execute well, and you have some people on your team that all do different things, so there's not any overlap. You don't need 2 technical founders because no one's going to sell, and you don't need 2 of me because no one can develop. So you need a little bit of everything. Sure, I think there's always a good time to start a company. I don't think that's bad, but it needs to be a really, really interesting product that makes sense. I met somebody yesterday, and the product was okay. It's fine. You could tell all of his or her money was put into that product. Like he was super into it, and there's a uphill battle for that person because he's in a space where there's like 4 or 5 big companies that are already doing it. Maybe he can eke out a path, but like I feel bad for people that haven't figured out their product fit yet. It's gonna be tough.
And going back to the ugly baby kind of harsh, not harsh, but it can be
Buzzsaw.
hard to deliver. Yeah, the buzzsaw, right? But like
Yeah.
giving that feedback to someone, and then actually as the person receiving it, right? So say you have a company that's big uphill battle. How do you like advice to those founders? How do you seek out advice that you should listen to, and then you actually make changes on versus people that are maybe just being doubters in your potential success? Because there are a lot of companies that probably need to figure out a pivot or shift something else, or maybe throw in the towel and move on to something else versus trying to keep it alive for the next 10 years, which maybe you can do. But how, as someone receiving that advice, do you disseminate between good and bad, and should I make a change now or wait 12 months or whatever?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. It comes down to ego versus math. At the end of the day, founders especially can get wrapped up in like, this is my identity, which is dangerous. To some degree, it's good. You want them to have ownership and to really have that on their back and take it. But if you're gonna lose, like waiting till you've spent all your money and depleted your 401k and sold all your stocks and you're divorced, you're like, well, now I gotta like go ahead and lose earlier than that if you can see the writing on the wall. Or what I try to advise them is, let's either figure out a pivot. Let's figure out if you have something that can be sold, or can you get acquired? Is there a merger? Is there a strategic partnership? That there are other ways to do it to make it a bit softer. But most startups fail. We know that. I don't know what the math, I think it's 70% or 80% of startups fail in the first 2 or 3 years. So it's not like most founders I know that have sold for 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million have failures under their belt before that. It's very rare that you hit a home run the first time. So like maybe this is just part of the process and you learned a lot, and now let's double down and find a new thing and take all the lessons that you learned and apply those in the next endeavor. When I'm advising someone, if I'm advising them through Reach or through Modern Ventures, my advice would be different than if it's just I met you at a cocktail party and we're just talking. I feel like I've bought some capital to spend when I'm coming to them through an official thing, and they know that I have no ulterior motive. I'm not telling your baby's ugly because I have a baby that's in the baby cuteness contest and I want to win. I'm just telling your baby's ugly because it's actually ugly. And I hate to say that. Maybe he has a good personality, but he's an ugly baby, and we can just talk about that. up front.
I just got to talk about that sometimes. I want to shift to that side of the equation though, which is the venture side and more on the macro aspects of venture. You talked about the programs that you're involved in. It's a large application process, and then a small cohort is selected from that, which goes through a program. I've been seeing a trend, maybe it's anecdotal, but a trend of more and more programs kind of coming up, and you can call them venture studios, startup studios. Some are building fully in house and then spinning out. Some are more kind of structured curriculums, but we're being more selective of what the investments are. And then there's more support EIRs, such as yourself, kind of wrapped in that. And I've talked with traditional venture capitalists as well, and there's a bit of LP questioning, which hasn't really been around in the past decade, of saying, is this the best vehicle, and are you the best position to return my capital to me at the multiple that I'm looking for? So my question to you is venture changing fundamentally in terms of how LPs invest dollars and then how money is deployed? Or is this just kind of a little bubble, and VCs are still here to stay in their traditional structure of 2 and 20 and the spray and pray tactic of, bet on 20 horses and one will carry the fund?
On the modern venture side, I'm wholly outside of the LP process. They just bring me in as a designated hitter to help the companies that they think that I can help with. So I don't have any insight on them. At the macro level, VCs aren't going anyplace. They pulled back for a little bit and they're starting to warm back up. So I don't think that this is the end of that. I think we're probably getting back to a healthier spot. I think it was unhealthy, the amount of money they were pouring into losing companies, and the amount of multiples that were being paid out was unsustainable. So I think we're coming back to where we probably should have been all along. With the REACH program, because they're part of Second Century Ventures, which is part of National Association of Realtors, they're pretty strategic about the companies that they bring in. So yeah, there isn't really an LP. It's funded by Second Century. Of course, they want to make a return to keep the program going, but it's, they're never going to work with a company that displaces real estate agents or realtors. They want to make sure that they're front and center. And, we have an alumni of, 200 companies. So, is this company, could this be acquired by one of our alumni? Could it acquire one of our alumni? Does it compete directly? How many people do we have that are already in that space? Are we creating a bunch of chatter? It's as much art as it is math. And sometimes really good companies don't get selected because there's reasons outside of that. So yeah, I can only speak really to their setup because I don't have insight into other LPs.
It's interesting though, even with that small sample size of an ecosystem play is very different than just a straight investment play.
For sure.
So when you're investing dollars, right? And the company needs dollars. But often new founders I've found discredit or discount the value that comes from the particular network or the type of money that's coming in. And that strategic money from, an example of Second Century is very unique in that you have this built-in network effect of potential acquirers, potential companies you can acquire, you can merge, you can do partnerships with, you have additional reach, you have additional experience. It's all within a particular sector. And it's these kind of stacking components that I'm seeing startups are asking a little bit more, or pushing a little bit more, saying, okay, Mr. or Mrs. VC, what can you do for me? Yes, you can write the check. Yes, I know I'm supposed to get strategic money, not dumb money. But like beyond that, what is your actual ecosystem? What is your air quotes platform of you're going to introduce me to a couple people that I can potentially hire, and then you're going to introduce me to some of your LPs who maybe invest in follow-on rounds. But what can you actually bring of strategic value? And so that's some of the thing, and maybe you don't have enough exposure to kind of comment on it, but that's the thing that I've been picking up on is founders and startups are almost demanding more strategic money, even in this environment where it's hard to fundraise. They're still kind of trying to be a little more selective in where they get the funds from.
Yeah, I love that. That's spot on. I mean, let's look at Leading RE's Solutions Group as the same way. There's a marketing fee they pay annually. It's not very high. And for that, they get a smattering of deliverables, right? Other companies, other franchises that would compete with Leading RE, you pay $25,000 and you're on a website with 500 other companies, and you guys are all the favorites, and that's it. And you just pay to be, it's pay to play. Anybody can get in, you pay, you're in. I hate the word pay to play, by the way. there's a fee, but I'm selective over who I let into to leading RE, the same way they should be selective over who they work with. And then they're going to get all these benefits. So the same thing, if we overlay that onto the reach template, is yeah, there's a financial element. And we tell people, look, you don't need us. You can do it on your own. You can build your house on your own, or you can hire a construction crew to help you. Either way, you'll end up with a house. Just one will take you 8 years and you make a lot of mistakes, and one will take you 6 months. It's up to you to measure whether that 6 months is worth the financial part of it or not. And it's okay either way. There's 100 people applying for 8 positions. We'll be fine, right? So the money is part of it. But to your point, those strategic introductions, I can bring 6 figures of value to somebody with 3 phone calls. No problem. And if you're at this earlier stage where you're in the first couple of years of being around, and you're looking at ARR, and it needs to grow to be able to tell a story, to get more fundraising, need a Series A, Series B, whatever, it only takes a couple of key accounts to really move the dial, and all of a sudden your valuation went from 4 million to 24 million, and it's a math problem for the founder to do. So we haven't found anybody to after they've gone through Reach to be like, well, that wasn't worth it. It's very, very valuable. And then sometimes sometimes they're so new or so busy trying to fundraise during that time period of 10 months while they're graduating, that they're not actually in a place where they can absorb all of it like they should. And then once they graduate, now they're in the alumni association, they're going to these meetings, these brainstorming calls, they're getting to talk to other founders, and they can find it like a second life of value on that part of it. So they get all of it for being part of Reach.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And again, just kind of having that comprehensive support. It's the correct answer is you can do it on your own. You can do lots of things on your own. But can you do it faster and better with help and have maybe a smaller piece of a bigger pie? And maybe the pie isn't shifting anyway because you need the dollars, regardless. So it's just a question of, do you want to go figure out your own, diet and eating exercise, or your exercises and your own fitness and all this kind of stuff, or do you want to hire a personal trainer that will do a lot of that for you and get you there far faster, and you have to pay some money, but you shorten the time to be able to do it. And that is the consumer choice at the end of the day, whether it's a company or an individual.
100%. And let's talk about something else, if it's okay to pivot. The CEO position of a startup often is a very lonely position and place to be. You've got a lot of people's money. You've got all of the decisions come through you. You're trying to build something. Maybe you've built it before. Probably you haven't. Maybe you didn't and it didn't work, and you got kind of that fear. You're bringing some post-traumatic stress with you from previous experiences. You're trying to figure it out. One of the benefits, which we don't really tout, but this happens automatically, is that you're going to be in this group with 8 or 9 other founders. They're going through the same thing, and the group is led by people that have founded and exited. And now all of a sudden you have idea sharing, and you're like, what do you do in this situation? How would you market this? What do you think about this pitch deck? And you're getting like real-time feedback from other people. Doesn't mean that any one person's opinion is what you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to do that. But if enough people say the same thing, you're like, oh, there's value there too, above and beyond the money and above and beyond the relationships and above and beyond the marketing and the PR. So, the loneliness is an unspoken thing that I've seen that I think probably needs to be talked about more.
I agree. I went through 500 startups, batch 9, and same type of thing of truly having a cohort of peers that you can relate to and actually get what you're going through. Significant others don't necessarily get it unless they've gone down that journey as well, and friends don't get it unless they've gone down that journey. It's a very unique experience, and you do have to keep a lot of the cards close to your chest because you can't necessarily divulge everything to your investors. You can't divulge things to your employees. You can't divulge anything to your friends because they don't get it. And so humans are meant to be tribal. We're meant to have a group of people that we share, that we connect with, that we, get and solicit feedback from. And so having that cohort, wherever you find it, it's absolutely huge to be able to have that peer group that you can lean on and ask for support and opinion and just, push back when you need it.
Yeah, because you can't even share this stuff with your employees because you're not quite sure what you're going to be doing, and maybe things are really tight, and you're right at this place where you're going to go left or you're right, and you need to just bounce an idea off somebody. There's true value in that.
To close this out, Jeff, what would you say is some future or technology or state that you hope to see in the world in the future? It could be AI, it could be not AI, it could be anything in terms of the consumer world. But what technology, what future are you hoping to kind of see come into existence over the next couple of years?
I don't know that I'm going to say that I'm hoping this happens, but I think this will happen because I think every time something happens that's in this space, it's going to displace a certain amount of people and it's going to be a disruptor. So I hate to hope for something like that, but I think this is where we're going. The process to search for a home, find an agent, go into contract, get approved for a mortgage, close on the mortgage, super time consuming, even if they've automated a bit of it, very expensive. I envision within a certain period of time where you're going to go on an app, you're going to get approved for a mortgage in 30 seconds. You're going to put an offer on a house through the app. You're going to get accepted. The appraisal will be done through an AVM. The money will be sent to the seller. Like everything's going to be like Venmo, like boom, 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 you're done, and it'll all be on your phone. Once they can figure out the encryption part of it, I envision buying a home is going to be easier than buying a car, and it should be. You always have a need for a human being to go and look at a house and make sure it has windows and rot and stuff like that. But I think it costs way too much to transact on a home right now. So that's number one. The second thing on the search, and this is coming out now, I just looked at something earlier this week. You're going to be able to go in and say, show me all the houses. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Show me all the houses in Charlotte that have copper roofs, and they'll show up. So it's no longer like searching and clicking a box and I want a pool and it's like you're just going to speak it. Show me all the houses within 1 mile of the Bank of America Stadium that are modern, 2-story with a pool. Boom. So I can do that locally. What if I could do that not global, well, maybe globally, but nationally? When I'm looking for a mountain home, but I'm not sure. There's tons of mountainous areas. I don't even know where to look. Show me a place that has good schools within 3 miles of a hospital. Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that process is going to get way, way tighter within the next 12 to 18 months. It's already happening. So that'll be really exciting.
I'm excited for that too, and I think to expand on that trend, to me, a lot of where technology is going with way more data being created, and then obviously AI being able to kind of naturally through human interfaces that just make sense of how humans naturally speak. We're going to get to this era of technology where for so long we've been clicking buttons or checking boxes or doing the thing that technology is supposed to guide us to do. And we're going to get away from that. And it's just going to be you interacting however you want to interact, with a screen, without a screen, by voice, by text, by thought. And that's more 5-10 years down the road. But just being able to have technology form around you and be hyper personalized based on your experience, based on who you are, what you're looking for, and not just kind of be this thing where you're filling out forms and filling out checkboxes. And that's how a lot of the internet is as of right now. It's based on standardization and conformity. Even if you look at social media platforms, it's all the same type of, the content changes, but
Yeah.
the vehicle through which we consume is always the same. And so when you start kind of breaking down just the concept of not needing buttons, technology starts becoming this far more immersive thing, but also the opposite of immersion, which is like it becomes background noise because you don't have to think about it, you don't have to worry about it. It just is, and it meets you where you are.
So let me ask you a question. You watched the movie AI, Steven Spielberg? Did you watch that movie?
No.
There's a movie called
I feel like I
AI.
should.
Well, I'm older than you. I'm 50, so it's old. Check it out. It's about
Yeah.
this future world where androids or robots and humans coexist, but humans have an uprising and like hate the robots, right? And so I don't want to beat the punchline of it. You should watch it. Anyways, the point is, I think we're going to get to a point very soon where yes, AI and robots and all this kind of stuff are going to be around, but it should be used to enhance our human element, not to replace it. And I'm assuming, or I think this is going to happen, that if you send me a deep fake video of you saying happy birthday, and I know it's a deep fake video, that's not going to hold a lot of value. Today it would, 'cause I wouldn't know any difference and it'd be so cool. But at some point, you picking up the phone and calling me and being a human and having actual real connection is going to be the pinnacle of networking, salesmanship, connection, relationship, all of that stuff. And where I think we're going towards, I think we're going to have to correct, is we're trying to use AI and technology to to connect everybody, lots of people all at once with this faux connection, it's not real. You didn't spend the time, and that's what I'm going to measure. So I know it's kind of counterintuitive to what we want AI to do, which is faster, cheaper, whatever. But at some point, you pick up the phone and actually calling me. Don't make it a deep fake. Make it actually you calling me. I'll ask you like code words to make sure it's you. Is going to hold a lot of weight.
Yeah, I completely agree. At the end of the day, humans have always craved and want connection, and it's real connection. So, yes, let's leverage all the technology, all the AI, all the stuff to remove the things we don't care about. But for the things that actually matter, which is genuine interaction and connection, that's going to be timeless, and it's going to just become even more important in this world of technology. Could do it now, but we don't want it to.
Agree. This is great.
Jeff, if people want to connect with you, follow up with you, hear more about you, where should they go?
Sure. Best way, just email me, jkennedy@leadingre.com. And I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, connect, DM me. I'm around.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show.
You bet.